Part 116. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1152. It turns out that Liang Mulan, that little bitch, is gone. This is really good. She doesn't have to waste her efforts anymore. The clothes she gave Liang Mulan that day were poisoned. The child was still young and his resistance was already weak, so how could he survive? This is just expected, and it's normal to not get through it. Thinking of this, Empress Dowager Lu sighed and looked at Emperor Yongming hypocritically. "Your Majesty, my condolences." Emperor Yongming glanced at her, pursed his lips and said nothing. However, the Liang family's royal family members were a little anxious at this time. It was unfortunate that since Emperor Yongming ascended the throne, he had lost two heirs in succession. The crown princess became pregnant a year after her marriage and gave birth to a son. For the northern Qi royal family, this was originally a good thing that everyone was happy with. But I don't know what kind of unlucky thing happened this year. The heirs in the palace had accidents one after another. The Prince Liang Muibei died first, and Lu Wanyi also had an accident not long after. Fortunately, the news of the Yongyi man's pregnancy dispelled the bad news in the palace one after another. A Zhangxi girl was also pregnant. After finally waiting for the Yongyi man to give birth to a son, the Yongming emperor had an heir. However, he did not expect that not long after the child was born, he was pregnant. Calculation. However, what Zhang Kanu was carrying in her belly turned out to be a ghost fetus, a result of a conspiracy with the imperial concubine. Now Liang Mulanyi, the only remaining male in the palace, is gone. Emperor Yongming is already very old, and he is still empty at his knees. This is not good news for the emperor. "Your Majesty." Prince Rong knelt down and his voice changed with anxiety. "Your Majesty is now 23 years old, but he still has no heir." Upon hearing this, Queen Mother Lu looked worried on the outside, but she was sneering in her heart. Who said the emperor had no sons? There are no more children born to bitches like Yun Gairan, Zhou Gaifei, and Lu Wanyi. And the son she gave birth to for the emperor was exactly the same as her original child. She even gave the son the nickname of her original son, Ulung. How could there be no one in the reign of Emperor Yongming? These old worrying things. Liang Mulan deserves a good death. Even if he doesn't die today, he will die by his own hands one day. Otherwise, how can he make room for himself? Empress Dowager Lu's eyes flashed coldly, and Emperor Yongming's thoughts were naturally the same as those of Empress Dowager Lu. "Huangbu, don't worry. I believe there will always be heirs, and there will definitely be no successors to the Empire of Northern Qi." As soon as he said these words he spoke very firmly, and even subconsciously turned his head to look at Queen Mother Lu, who smiled brightly at him. As soon as Emperor Yongming finished speaking, he himself was confident, but unfortunately the clan's thoughts were different from his. No one in the clan knew about his affair with Empress Dowager Lu. Therefore, at this moment, the corner of his mouth was angry with anxiety, but everyone saw that Emperor Yongming was not in a hurry, and Prince Rong couldn't help but say, "There is a sudden change in the sky. Maybe there is a monster born, or the ancestors show up." He is the brother of the late emperor. Although he is a sibling from the same mother, he is also the flesh and blood of Liang Yi. The identity is extraordinary. After Prince Rong said that, Queen Mother Lu's face suddenly turned cold. Just as she was about to speak, he continued, "According to the old minister's suggestion, it is better to ask Taikang Temple to use the tortoise divination ritual to calculate the auspicious time." The emperor performed an act of worship to heaven. Absurd. Before he could finish his words, Queen Mother Lu sneered and cut off Prince Rong's words. She folded her hands and put them under her breasts. The wide sleeves of the blue Queen Mother's robe hung down. Staring at Prince Rong condescendingly, his pink face as gorgeous as a peach and plum now had a cold look on his face, and he sneered repeatedly, "Prince Rong is old, and he can come up with such a ridiculous plan. Something happened to the eldest prince. It was clearly the curse of concubinda. What does it have to do with the evildoer? Now concubinda has been executed. The emperor is still young and may not have any heirs in the future. Prince Rong is really too anxious. What she said made Prince Rong turn pale. After a while, looking at the face of Queen Mother Lu, Prince Rong lowered his head in response. Although Prince Rong is much older than Queen Mother Lu in terms of age, in terms of status, he is his brother-in-law in private and Queen Mother Lu is his sister-in-law. To the Duke, he was a minister, while Queen Mother Lu was aloof. Once Prince Rong did not dare to speak. He was the oldest and most prestigious in the clan royal family, so naturally others would stop speaking. While she was talking, John Kanu was already tied up in the bedroom. She was pushed out, tied up and stuffed in her mouth. She looked at Lily and made a resentful sound of aha while twisting her body to rush towards Queen Mother Lu. She had obviously heard what Empress Dowager Lu had said before about giving her a silk ribbon. This was the time when she was resentful of Lily. Lily promised her to keep her intact after the accomplishment and sent her out of the palace to be with the scholar. But she didn't expect that now that she had lost her virginity, the scholar would also be caught by the Queen Mother. John Kanu went crazy, shaking her head desperately, trying to shake off the cloth in her mouth. The queen, slave. She tried her best to open her mouth to speak, but the veil in her mouth made her tongue unable to move flexibly. Queen Mother Lu saw her face turned green with anxiety and became suspicious. She turned her head and her eyebrows furrowed. Seeing this scene, Shai King on the side was so anxious that cold sweat broke out on her back. Today Lily was just sentenced to be imprisoned in the palace, waiting for her punishment. During this period, as long as nothing happens to Lily, the Zhou family will always have a way to save her. But if John Kanu tells the whole story now, Emperor Yongming might be furious and give Lily a glass of poisonous wine on the spot. Thinking of this, Shai King was furious in her heart. She was worried about Lily and resentful that John Kanu was unethical. If it weren't for the Zhou family, she would have died in that brothel long ago. How could she still survive today? Lily did take advantage of her, but it was precisely because of Lily's use that she avoided being labeled as an ordinary prostitute to pick up customers by her grandma in anger. Based on this, she should not fall out at this time. Shi Qing's mind was racing, and she turned to look at Lily anxiously, only to see that she was still extremely calm, as if she wasn't panicking at all. Shi Qing was as anxious as an ant on a hot pot, thinking that even if she risked her life, when he was about to silence John Kanu, before she could move, a nun came out of the room, holding a baby in her arms. The baby was wrapped in apricot yellow cloth, and I wondered where it came from. Empress Dowager Lu was originally staring at John Kanu suspiciously, but when she saw the baby from the corner of her eye, she immediately frowned. Wait a minute. This baby must be the one that the Zhou family smuggled into the palace, the baby that she ordered to be killed by being tortured with silk cloth. Empress Dowager Lu didn't have the slightest pity in her heart at this time. Instead, she said with a bit of schadenfreude, this apricot color is for the prince's use. How can an evil breed of unknown origin be qualified to use it? Peel it off these nuns should the dead baby was to be disposed of. As soon as Empress Dowager Lu finished speaking, the nuns knelt down in panic. These people were not far away from each other originally, but now that they were kneeling, Empress Dowager Lu could see their faces more clearly. She asked these nuns to take off the clothes of the dead baby. Although some nuns showed unbearable expressions on their faces, they did not dare to disobey. Lily saw the bright and sinister face of Empress Dowager Lu. This behind her beautiful face was a snake-like heart. She couldn't help but say, "The Queen Mother, out of mercy, will you allow him to put on his clothes and leave?" After hearing what Lily said, Empress Dowager Lu laughed twice, with a look of satisfaction on her face. The country has national laws, and every family has its own rules. How can a scoundrel be worthy enough to wear this kind of clothes without fear of ruining his fortune? You will not live long in the next life. After she finished speaking, she paused. The noble concubine should also learn more about these things. If Mr. Joe could teach you well that day, how could the noble concubine be so bold and dare to do such a thing today? Before the last word there was uttered, the first few nuns had already taken off the apricot clothes on the dead baby, because they were doing so under the eyes of the Queen Mother, the Emperor, a family of clan members, and the noble concubine. So the nuns who were taking off their clothes moved very nervously. In a panic, they opened some of the cloth that had been stuck together on the dead baby's face, revealing the baby's cute face with green and black eyes. The proud smile on Queen Mother Lu's face suddenly seemed like she had seen a ghost, and her expression changed drastically. The words she didn't finish were as if someone had strangled her neck, and she almost screamed. What did she see? What did she see? She saw the baby bump that she had given birth to in 10 months of pregnancy. She was being held in the hands of a group of rude women, and her expression changed. How is this going? Empress Dowager Lu took a deep breath, her lips lost color instantly, and a coldness hit her from all directions, as if it had already poured into her body. She was so cold that she almost started to shiver. The copper stove she held in her hand, it seemed as if she lost her temperature instantly. Queen Mother Lu could hardly control herself and began to tremble. She actually saw her son. Worried that she had seen it wrong, Queen Mother Lu blinked her eyes tightly. She closed her eyes hard. When she looked again, the familiar face of the child still appeared in front of her. This is impossible. Queen Mother Lu's body was covered with knots. She wanted to scream, but found that her throat was dry and she couldn't make a sound at all. She subconsciously wanted to take a step out, but the solace of her feet seemed to have taken root in the ground. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't lift it. My chest felt like a big stone was pressed down, heavy. The Empress Dowager Lu was still feeling very proud a moment ago. She had taken care of John Kanu, concubine Zhou, and even the Zhou family. She had solved the crisis of the Lu family. She also had one less rival in the palace. She was fighting for her son. The road was paved, but why did her son appear here? To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1153. The sound of teeth clashing together was loud enough to make Queen Mother Lu panic even more. She kept comforting herself that she had made a mistake. There was no way her son Liang Malang would appear here. He was placed in a safe place outside the palace. There is a special person guarding the place, and it is impossible to appear in the deep palace. She cannot panic or be chaotic. If anyone sees the clues, she will be finished. She tried her best to control herself and not let anyone notice the sound of her teeth clashing, but Empress Dowager Lu was horrified to find that it seemed that all this had no effect. She could almost feel the surprised eyes of the people around her, as if they were confused. What should I do? What should I do if someone discovers something strange? When she was reborn after death, she found that she had died and came back to life again. Empress Dowager Lu had never been so panicked before, but now she was indescribably panicked, and an inexplicable despair took root in her heart. And spread quickly. She wanted to try to smile, but this body seemed not to be hers. What's wrong with the Queen Mother? Lily asked with a smile when she saw Queen Mother Lu's face as if she had seen a ghost. At this moment, half of the dead baby's cheeks were exposed. Empress Dowager Lu kept looking at him. I am afraid that Empress Dowager Lu finally discovered it at this time. She personally ordered to kill the flesh and blood of her 10-month pregnancy. This kind of I'm afraid the taste is unpleasant. Cleverness was misled by cleverness. Empress Dowager Lu thought she was very clever and thought that her plans were incomparable, so she acted unscrupulously. Now she is reaping the consequences. He had given her a few chances, but whenever she showed any mercy, her conscience remained intact. Her son would not have ended up like this, and who could blame him? That day, she killed Liang Muibei for her own selfish reasons, and now she killed Liang Mulin. Concubine De also died at her hands, and Empress Dowager Lu's hands were dirty. Now it was indeed karma, and she was hunting geese all day long. But she was still blinded by the goose pecks, and her biological son died by her own hands. As long as Queen Mother Lu has even the slightest bit of compassion, don't ask the palace officials to take off the baby boy's clothes. I'm afraid she will feel better if she handles some things ignorantly. It's a pity that she was so ruthless that she couldn't even leave a covering for the baby. Naturally, the child's face couldn't be blocked. For the Queen Mother Lu, she would see her son die by her own hands. I'm afraid it's a huge blow. Lily almost sympathized with this baby, having fallen in love with such a mother. She asked Queen Mother Lu, took 2 steps, took off her shawl, put it on the baby boy who was almost undressed, and tidied his wet hair. The Queen Mother saw that familiar face being blocked by Lily. She didn't know whether she was relieved or a little panicked. She didn't dare to look at that familiar face, which looked too much like her Alang. Queen Mother Lu's heartbeat was still very fast, and her tone of voice was a little uneven when she breathed. She couldn't be confused or panic. It wasn't certain whether it was her son. Maybe she missed her son too much, or maybe she hadn't seen her Alang for several months after giving birth, so she misjudged it. Everyone knows what to think. It is always easy to see something. Thinking about his son, he thought that the baby boy brought into the palace by the Zhou family was the same as his own Alang, but how could it be the same? Babies originally grow very fast, and they look different every day. You must have read it wrong. You must have read it wrong. She comforted herself so much, but she didn't know why. Her eyes were a little hot. When she heard Lily's words, she came back to her senses as if the spell that had fixed her body was broken. It's nothing. The AI family just felt a little pity when they saw this child. Such a huge joke coming from the mouth of Queen Mother Lu almost made Lily laugh her teeth off. She pursed her lips. The woman who just a moment ago had ordered a helpless baby to be beaten with silk cloth. The woman who didn't even allow the baby to wear a piece of clothing after his death. At this time, she even said it was a pity. This was really a cat crying and a mouse pretending to be compassionate. She was the one who killed the person. Now she felt pity for him. The Queen Mother is so kind-hearted. Lily stood up as she spoke. The thick cloth fell to the ground, revealing the baby boy's face. Although Queen Mother Lu told herself not to look at the baby boy's face, she insisted on looking at it as if she was possessed. When she saw that when his face was as big as a palm, his whole body seemed to be struck by 5 thunders, and he was stunned for a moment. It's her Alang, it's her Alang. She will never forget that face, nose, and eyes. He has become fatter, and his eyebrows are much longer than when she left. How did her Alang appear here? Queen Mother Lu's mind went blank. She stared blankly as several nuns held the rewrapped baby in their arms. The apricot yellow cloth fell to the ground on one side, and the small clothes in the middle were spread out. She was clearly the one who had someone take her out of the palace. In an instant, Queen Mother Lu almost collapsed. She watched with splitting eyes as the baby's soft body was held in her mother's arms. The cold surrounded her whole body, making her shiver uncontrollably. A heartbreaking pain arose from her heart and spread from all directions. She could hardly control it. Her legs softened and she fell to the ground in a convulsion. Queen Mother, Emperor Yongming on the side didn't know what was going on. Queen Dowager Lu suddenly fell to the ground as if she was possessed. He panicked and didn't care that the royal family was still in front of him. He stepped forward and hugged Queen Mother Lu by the waist. Then, his concerned eyes fell on her face, and he realized that Mrs. Lu's complexion was green and white, and her expression was ferocious and her eyes were terrifying. What's wrong with the Queen Mother? Lily stood in the distance, looking at the Queen Mother Lu who looked like she was about to die, and asked in a soft voice. Empress Dowager Lu's whole body was shaking like chaff. She clenched her teeth tightly. Mother and son were connected. The death of her son made her heartbroken. Her eyes almost turned blood red. But at the moment when she was about to shed tears, she suddenly woke up. She couldn't shed tears. If she shed tears, these people would doubt her. The matter about her son must not be known to anyone, otherwise the emperor's throne will not be secure and her life will not be saved. As soon as such thoughts came out, Empress Dowager Lu almost used all her strength to bite her lips. The severe pain in her mouth made her rational a little clearer. She suppressed the pain and panic in her heart and forced herself to calm. The AI family is fine, it's just. As she spoke, her chest kept rising and falling, 2 veins popped out in her neck, and her chin was tense, which showed that Queen Mother Lu was not as calm as she appeared on the surface. She was so sad when she spoke that she couldn't even speak clearly. After saying a few words, her eyes became so astringent that tears seemed to flow out, but crying was a taboo in the palace, so she couldn't cry. At this time, when she said that she was fine, not only Lily didn't believe it, but even Emperor Yongming and the royal family members might not believe it, but no one exposed it at this time. Lily looked at the face of Queen Mother Lu who was holding back the pain, and recalled how Lily had to force herself to remain calm after the death of her son in the plot. It was very similar to the scene of Queen Mother Lu at the moment. Your Majesty, the AI family suddenly felt very uncomfortable and wanted to go back to the palace first. Empress Dowager Lu shook her head in panic, her body shaking non-stop. Emperor Yongming felt pity and doubt in his heart, but at this time, the royal family members were still now, even if he had all kinds of doubts in his heart, he could only say yes and let her go. Aji came forward to help Queen Mother Lu, but Queen Mother Lu turned her head and glanced at her, which frightened Aji to death. The whites of her eyes were red with tears in them, and her eyes were fierce, as if an evil spirit wanted to eat people. Aji didn't know what he had done, so he hurriedly stepped forward to support Queen Mother Lu. She felt Empress Dowager Lu's soft and delicate body leaning against her, as if it was entangled by a poisonous snake, which made Aji panic. Empress Dowager Lu was unwell, so Emperor Yongming naturally had no time to get angry at Lily. He just looked at Lily coldly, turned around and left. Now his heart is entirely focused on Queen Mother Lu, and he has no feelings for Zhou Beihe, his married wife. Anyway, today's matters have been dealt with, and the evildoer has been dealt with. He really doesn't want to look at Beihe again, so Emperor Yongming also turned and left. Prince Rong and others followed behind him, and from a distance they heard the suggestion of the emperor's selection from the clan. As soon as the group of people left, the sound of hammering the palace door could be heard from outside. Shi Qing breathed a sigh of relief, and her legs shook so much that they were almost out of shape and as soft as noodles. Her back was soaked with cold sweat, and she wiped the sweat from her head. So close. On the side, John Kane was still tied up. Because the Queen Mother had a sudden accident, she was spared her life. She was slumped on the ground. Lily looked at her coldly and ordered Shi Qing, tie her up and throw her back in the palace, be careful to find someone to watch over you. As soon as the emperor and others left the Xianfu palace, many clever eunuchs and maids knew that Xianfu palace was in trouble. As early as the emperor and others came in, some unimportant palace officials climbed up the branches and went to find their own way. Xianfu Palace, which used to be bustling, was now extremely deserted. In the Fengming Palace, when Empress Dowager Lu was helped out of the chariot, she was already weak and could not move down. She was still in a daze all the way and could not wake up at all. This short road, the eunuchs carried her. The walk was not long, but for Empress Dowager Lu, it was as difficult and long as the moment when she was about to be beheaded in her previous life. She thought a lot. She recalled all the events in her previous life. She remembered Liang Yi leading people into the palace, and the personal maid Hongying told her when she came in that the prince had been killed. She remembered that consort Gao's grandfather came in with a head that belonged to her Lang-er. The heart-rending moment was less than 1/10,000th of what it was now. Because, at that time, her son died in Gao's hands, but this time, her son died in her own hands, and she didn't even have anyone to blame. To be continued. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 1154. Every time Empress Dowager Lu thought about the sentence she blurted out, she felt even more hurt and dripping with blood. With a pale face, she was helped into Fengming Hall by Aji and others. Aji knelt down in front of her and asked in a low voice, "Empress, do you want?" Before she could finish her words, Queen Mother Lu stared at her with a numb expression. The eyes were cold and dead. Before Aji could recover, Queen Mother Lu had already raised her hand and slapped her face. Queen Mother Lu obviously looked delicate and frail, but she didn't know where she got such strength. When she slapped Aji on the face, it made Aji's ears buzz and he suddenly turned to the left. He tilted his head and hit his head heavily on the armrest of the chair next to him. Aji felt like stars were popping up in her eyes, but she didn't dare to cry out in pain. Although she didn't know where she had made a mistake, she knew the character of Queen Mother Lu. If she begged for mercy at this time, Queen Mother Lu would not only not stop, but she would get even more angry. How about that? It would be good to wait for her to calm down and calm down. Thinking of this, she endured the pain and sat up and knelt down again. Empress Dowager Lu slapped her face with her backhand, and 2 finger marks soon appeared on Aji's cheek. Empress Dowager Lu slapped her twice, letting out a little of the fire in her heart, but the pain of losing her son was even more heart-piercing. She was originally full of hope, but her lifelong obsession was completely destroyed again at this moment. Net. The first time something happened to her son, she could still bear it, but after rebirth in this life, she had arranged so many things, but the result was still failure. 2 consecutive blows had a fatal impact on Empress Dowager Lu. She looked at her coldly. Ji fell to his knees with a look of fear in his eyes. I wish I could tear him into pieces. Her eyes were like a ferocious beast that wanted to devour people, so fierce and cold that it made people tremble all over. Suho stood next to Empress Dowager Lu, and the despair and cold sense of murder could be seen in her body. Suho's body tensed up. The atmosphere in Fengming Hall was tense, and no one dared to breathe. Among the people present, Aji and the people around him didn't know what was going on, but Suho was the only one who knew what Empress Dowager Lu was angry about. What are you complaining about? This time, He pulled the trigger and directly cut off the roots of Empress Dowager Lu. She severely retaliated against her and made Empress Dowager Lu angry, resentful, and sad, but it was difficult to complain. She reaped the consequences, but she was dumb and pornographic. Lotus, there is something difficult to say. No wonder she went crazy. But this terrifying and gloomy woman killed her biological son with her own hands, but even so, she could endure it without saying a word. Aji was trembling all over. Queen Mother Lu's expression was very calm at the moment, but she became calmer. This proved that the angrier she felt, the cold hairs on Aji's back had already stood up, and his body was shaking, but he did not dare to say a word. Why don't you follow? Queen Mother Lu stared at Aji coldly at this time. She knew that she was venting her anger, but she needed to kill someone, otherwise Queen Mother Lu felt that she would not be able to survive. She must find an outlet, otherwise she will go crazy. When speaking, Queen Mother Lu's voice was as soft as a whisper in her mouth, and Aji shivered even more fiercely. She didn't know what went wrong with her. She swallowed, her mouth bitter, and tried to think of what Empress Dowager Lu meant by her words. The changes in Empress Dowager Lu before and her anger at this time proved that something big must have happened. She bit her lip, tears in her eyes but not daring to fall down. After thinking for a long time, she didn't know that it was because of extreme panic, so her mind went blank, so she had no idea what Empress Dowager Lu was referring to. Aji was panicked, but Empress Dowager Lu didn't need her to speak at all. You should be cut to pieces by 1,000 cuts, you're cheap maid. Queen Mother Lu said these words softly with a sneer on her lips. To others, Queen Mother Lu's voice sounded soft when she said this, but Aji, who was kneeling in front of her, and Suho, who was standing next to her, could clearly see the coldness in Queen Mother Lu's eyes. She said these words through gritted teeth. Her tone was gentle and enchanting, but her expression was already disturbing Aji. Aji knew that she never told jokes. Now he swallowed, his lips were trembling so much that he couldn't speak at all. Lock up Aji first. The AI family is very unwell at the moment. We sent someone to the Taiji Hall and asked the Emperor to come over after he has finished his government affairs. If the AI family has something to say to the Emperor, Empress Dowager Lu looked expressive at this time. Unable to escape from the frenzy, he fell down on the chair, resting his elbows on the armrests, holding his cheeks in his palms, his body still shaking slightly. She didn't name her by name when she gave the order, but after she gave the order, Aji was in trouble, so naturally Suho, whom she had trusted before, would help her. Suho responded, but Empress Dowager Lu didn't respond. Suho slightly raised the corners of his lips, and then asked people to help Empress Dowager Lu into the palace. He ordered people to prepare hot water for her to wipe her face and change her clothes, and then took some mint. After burning incense, he ordered people to take Aji into custody. Aji was completely covered at this time and was unable to resist at all. In the past, when she was Empress Dowager Lu's confidant, she enjoyed great glory in the Fengming Palace. But now, once she is rejected by Empress Dowager Lu, the palace servants and eunuchs who used to flatter her by calling her Aunt Ji all want to stay away from her. She was imprisoned in the palace like a plague, and the door outside was locked. She sat in the corner, holding back the tears for a long time before they burst out. The emperor was entangled by Prince Rong and others. It was already dark and he had not returned yet. In the Queen Mother Lu's palace, she was leaning on the soft couch and giving instructions to a middle-aged aunt. When Suho came in, the aunt sat upright. After getting up, he bowed respectfully to Queen Mother Lu and left. "Where is the emperor?" Queen Mother Lu asked with a gloomy expression. Suho knelt down and replied respectfully, Your Majesty still has something to do in the Tai Chi Palace. I went there several times, but was stopped by eunuch Sanfu." After hearing this, Empress Dowager Lu sneered, grabbing the sheets with her hands, her fingertips turning white. At this time, he has something to do. There was a bit of anger in her tone, and she was still in Suho. When she was silent, Empress Dowager Lu changed the subject again. "Go to the Shen Punishment Division, Lu Shen, Mr. Lu, and tell him that there is a palace servant in the AI family's hands. He has committed a heinous crime by disobeying orders. Let him take him away." The palace servant she was talking about who had committed a heinous crime was obviously Aji. When Empress Dowager Lu used Aji, she always rewarded her, but now if she offended her, Aji would end up like this. Even though Suho had been so jealous of Aji, when he heard Empress Dowager Lu's words, he felt extremely sad. What kind of place is a place like the criminal division? Everyone in the palace will tremble when they hear this name. After entering, no one can come out intact. People can peel off their skin after entering. Aji has served Empress Dowager Lu for so long, but once she was disgusted by her, he ended up like this. A master like the Queen Mother is unreliable. She didn't ask Empress Dowager Lu what the reason was, and just said yes. Empress Dowager Lu was obviously very satisfied with Suho's reaction. She had no intention of talking to Suho at the moment, and just waved her hand tiredly. signaling her to go out. When we came out of Fengming Hall, it was already dark outside, and the main hall behind was brightly lit, making it even more dark and dark. I don't know if it was because of what happened today, but a shadow seemed to be shrouded in the palace. Suho shivered. Seeing that no one noticed him, he lowered his head and walked towards the corridor. The key was in her hand when she was staying with Aji. The place was deserted and the palace people were afraid to avoid it. When Suho opened the door, it took a while for his eyes to adjust to the darkness in front of him, and then he could clearly see Aji huddled in the corner. He squatted on the ground in a ball, his face buried between his knees. The room exuded a gloomy and putrid smell. It was unknown how many guilty palace residents were imprisoned here before. Fengming Palace, such an exquisite palace complex in the palace, a luxurious place paved with jade, actually hides such a filthy and dirty place. Did the Queen Mother let me out? When Aji heard the voice, his body trembled first, and then he asked in surprise. Suho squatted down, and the two of them looked at each other in the darkness. Suho looked at Aji's eyes that were particularly bright and full of hope in the dark night, and slowly shook his head. Auntie, the Queen Mother ordered a slave to come and see you off. Going to the criminal punishment department. Hearing this, Aji shook his head as if going crazy, tears splashed down his face, and he didn't know where the strength came from. He jumped up and rushed out. Impossible, impossible, the Queen Mother will never do it. You will send your slave to the sentence department, you are lying. Why are you lying? Suho reached out to stop her. She reached out and patted Suho on the back. I want to ask the Queen Mother myself. There was no way the Queen Mother would kill her, especially if she was sent to the criminal punishment department. Who in the palace doesn't know what kind of place the Shenxing department is, and that he plays a big role in Empress Dowager Lu? He is the one who contacts Empress Dowager Lu and the news outside the palace, including when she was pregnant, and he personally served her. How could Queen Mother Lu want to kill her? This is absolutely impossible. It must be Suho, a cheap maid, who wants to scare her deliberately. The Queen Mother doesn't want to see my aunt. After hearing this, Aji stretched out his hand to catch Suho. Be brave, the Queen Mother will never kill me. Why is it impossible? Suho sneered and asked, grabbing Aji and pushing him aside. Why is it impossible? Just because my aunt was waiting by her side when the Queen Mother was pregnant. Aji's face was shocked when she heard what she said. He was so shocked that he took 7 or 8 steps back. He stared at Suho with trembling lips, unable to say a word. Suho adjusted his clothes. Auntie wants to ask, how did the slave know about this? Aji swallowed his saliva and said nothing. Suho didn't want her to say anything at the moment. He just pursed his lips and said, Auntie, don't be a fool even after death. Do you know how the Queen Mother wants to kill you? Why? Aji was trembling all over, her back pressed against the wall. The cold wall penetrated through her clothes and seemed to make her whole body freeze stiff. With this coldness, she calmed down a little and asked the question out loud. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan ERWR. Chapter 1155. Because, the baby that died in Xianfa Palace today was the prince born to the Queen Mother in 10 months pregnancy. Suho finished speaking with a calm expression. Aji was stunned for a moment, and then collapsed. The Queen Mother's biological son died, and she died by her own hands. Do you think you can survive? Suho's words were like the last straw that broke Aji's mind, and she fell softly to the ground. Empress Dowager Lu would not let her go. No wonder Empress Dowager Lu slapped her before. It was because Empress Dowager Lu was suffering in her heart but had nowhere to vent it. She wanted to plot against Jiang Kainu, and wanted the lives of the imperial concubine and hundreds of members of the Zhou family, but she tried all her tricks, but in the end she was tricked by the imperial concubine. How could a person like Empress Dowager Lu endure such a loss? Take such a breath? She will definitely take it out on herself. Thinking back to Empress Dowager Lu saying that she blamed herself for not going in to take a look, obviously what Suho said was true. Empress Dowager Lu really killed her own son. She was blaming herself for not seeing that it was the Prince Liang Malang. Empress Dowager Lu, you are blaming yourself. Thinking of her saying that she deserved to be killed, Aji trembled all over, she was dead. But seeing Suho in front of her, how did she know about Empress Dowager Lu's pregnancy? And she thought carefully about the prince that Suho had said before that Empress Dowager Lu gave birth to. How did Suho know that he was a prince? Suho knew that it was not surprising that Empress Dowager Lu had a son, but how did she know that the person Empress Dowager Lu had an affair with was the emperor? Only the emperor's son is worthy of being called a prince. Aji endured the panic and fear in his heart and forced himself to calm down. Wait, the child had an accident in the imperial concubine's palace, and the imperial concubine and the Zhou family brought the child into the palace. In other words, the imperial concubine knew about this. Not only that, she also knew where the prince was hiding. There are people from Xianfu Palace in Fengming Palace, and all this is planned by the imperial concubine. Thinking about Suho's visit today, I'm afraid she was the one who took refuge in the imperial concubine. Aji's eyes lit up. Her lips trembled. What do you want to do? She is indeed a smart person. As soon as she said the words, Aji already knew what to do. Originally, when Lily said she wanted to win over Aji, Suho thought it was absolutely impossible. After all, Aji was loyal to Queen Mother Lu, and she was a member of the Lu family. Winning her over was not easy. Unexpectedly, Lily set up a clever trap and took advantage of Empress Dowager Lu's anger to force Aji into desperation. If Lily allowed herself to take the opportunity to intervene again, Aji would definitely surrender. Now it seems that what Lily said, everything has been fulfilled. Since Aunt knows, it is not convenient for me to say more. There is a big change in the palace tonight. I just want to know what the Queen Mother left behind when she met with the Emperor on weekdays. Queen Mother Lu is extremely cautious and does not take things lightly. Trust me, Suho has been waiting by her side for such a long time, but he doesn't even know anything about her and Emperor Yongming. But since Aji has been serving Queen Mother Lu for a short time, he won her trust. Moreover, she knew everything about the prince, so she would definitely know more information than herself. Aji had already been mentally prepared. When Suho asked this question, she sneered, "Come here." She waved to Suho. Suho leaned over and she whispered to Suho. At the end, she hesitated, "I have given everything to you now. I don't care about anything else. I just want to survive." After she finished speaking, a bitter look appeared on her face. "If you want to die." Auntie is overthinking. Suho laughed and leaned closer. "The noble concubine is such a generous person. I will order someone to send my aunt to the sentence department later. This physical pain must be. You have to eat some, but whether you can save your life depends on what my aunt just said, whether it is enough." This was taught by Lily. If Aji is smart, he will hand over everything, which will increase the chance of overthrowing the Queen Mother Lu and the others. The Lu family's opportunity, once the palace is controlled by them, will naturally save Aji's life. And if Aji had other selfish motives and kept trying to hold Empress Dowager Lu down for a long time, Aji would naturally be too smart but was misled by his cleverness, and would suffer a lot in the punishment department and die there. After hearing this, Aji's face changed greatly. He hesitated for a long time, gritted his teeth, reached into his clothes, and took out a small gold key from his pocket. This contains some personal information of the Queen Mother and the Emperor. There are some love poems written on it. Are you satisfied with it now? Suho reached out to take it and held the key tightly. This was the evidence that he controlled the death of Empress Dowager Lu and Emperor Yongming. She carefully placed the key close to her body and nodded. "Don't worry, Aunt. The imperial concubine will definitely remember my aunt's help." Aji nodded randomly and kept telling her, "Please hurry up, my queen. In a place like the Shenxing department, even the copper skin and iron bones had to be completely demolished, so Ji was naturally afraid. Empress Dowager Lu was lying in the palace. The emperor didn't come over until Prince Rong and others were dismissed impatiently. The people in Empress Dowager Lu's palace had been sent out, and all those left behind were the confidants sent in by the Lu family. Sandalwood was lit in the palace, which Suho had lit when she went to look for Aji. The aroma was a bit intoxicating. The moment she saw Emperor Yongming, she threw herself into his arms and burst into tears. "What's wrong?" Emperor Yongming saw her crying so hard that his heart ached. Ever since he saw this bright, flamboyant, and willful woman, he had never seen such a grief-stricken look on her face. Emperor Yongming was furious. "Who made you so sad?" "Your Majesty, Your Majesty, Your Majesty." Empress Dowager Lu's heart was filled with murderous intent at this time, but years of living in the palace forced her to suppress the ferocious look on her face. She knew that men always take advantage of Chu Chu's pitiful behavior. She leaned softly in Emperor Yongming's arms. "Zhou is a bitch, Zhou is a bitch, I want her to die, I want her to die." Empress Dowager Lu had realized at this moment that she had been plotted by Lily. People say that dogs that bite don't bark, and this is indeed true. Ever since she killed Liang Muobei, Lily had remained silent. Empress Dowager Lu was still secretly proud at that time. Seeing her coming to greet him in a well-behaved manner every day, seeing her being allowed to be rounded and squashed by him, she looked down on Lily, this stupid woman. She thought that Lily would be angry with concubine Xian, and she even thought that she had plotted Lily before and killed her and Zhang Kanu together. But now that things have happened, what does Empress Dowager Lu not understand? While she was feeling complacent here, the concubine, a bitch, might have already known about the fact that Liang Muobei died at her hands, but this woman stayed dormant and endured without saying a word. She somehow knew that she was pregnant, and she was afraid that Zhang Kanu was also hers. She arranged for Zhang Kanu to enter the palace to seduce the emperor, and then falsely spread that Zhang Kanu was pregnant, thinking that she and Zhang Kanu could be eradicated. But she arranged a big net to wait for herself to be eliminated. This insidious and vicious woman got her own son, plotted against herself, and let herself kill Alung. It was all Zhou Lily's fault, her fault. If it weren't for her, how could she have attacked Alang? She wants to cut Lily into pieces. She wanted everyone in the Zhou family to die a good death, she wanted to slaughter the entire Zhou family, and she wanted to wipe out the Zhou family. Queen Mother Lu was thinking about all kinds of revenge thoughts, but the tears on her face became more fierce and urgent. Emperor Yongming looked at her weak look, stretched out his hand to touch her back gently, and pondered for a moment. The Zhou family is not moving now. The Zhou family's camels are bigger than horses, so it is not that easy to kill the Zhou family. Fortunately, this time the Zhou family helped Zhou Beizhong to do something, which was a taboo. It was not impossible to attack the Zhou family. He was thinking about it, but Empress Dowager Lu stretched out her hand to push him away. Emperor Yongming was a little helpless and reached out to hug her. He loved Empress Dowager Lu's pampering look. She was as delicate as anything, and she had a beautiful face. She is soft and charming, but her temperament is like that of a chili pepper, which makes people fall in love with her. He just loves the character of Empress Dowager Lu. "Look how anxious you are," Empress Dowager Lu sneered, stretched out her fingers to hold him up, and picked up a box on the side. The box was covered with mud, but it was wrapped in brocade coins. She tremblingly stretched out her hand to pick up the box. Picked her up and stuffed her into Emperor Yongming's arms angrily. "You are reluctant to let you destroy the Zhou family. You are reluctant to bear her coquettish look. You can't forget that she once served you, right? Have you forgotten? If you forget me, have you forgotten our child?" Queen Mother Lu shed tears again as she spoke. There was fragrance everywhere in the room. Emperor Yongming held Wen Xiangnef right in his arms. His thoughts moved greatly. He is a normal man, but since he had Empress Dowager Lu, he has less access to the bodies of other women in the harem. His energy and blood are already surging, which shows that something is wrong with Empress Dowager Lu's expression. She takes out such a precious thing. Emperor Yongming hesitated for a moment and opened the lid of the box. A baby corpse wrapped in silk appeared in front of him. He was startled and surprised. He actually screamed and retreated a few steps. Although a dead baby appeared in front of him only today, and Emperor Yongming's own son had died before, he had seen such a tragic situation before, and it was so close. The baby was smothered to death, and his face was abnormally blue and black. Especially when he saw it under such circumstances, Emperor Yongming was even more horrified, but Empress Dowager Lu cried even more sadly. She touched the baby's warm cheek with her hand and whispered softly, singing, "Dear little Alung, sleep well." What? Emperor Yongming's eyes widened and he was stunned when he heard her shout out the word Alung. Empress Dowager Lu shouted, "It's my Alung, it's my Alung, it's our Alung Lang, your majesty, this bitch, concubine Zhou, has plotted against me." Emperor Yongming only felt that he could not come back to his senses. He was dumbfounded. Today's series of events shocked him so much that he could not come back to his senses. He did not see the baby's face today, so he did not know that the dead baby was his own child. To be continued. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 1156. When Empress Dowager Lu ordered the baby to be put to death, Lily stopped him and asked him if he wanted to see the baby and if he wanted the baby to die. His answer was that the baby deserved death. He executed his son himself, and Emperor Yongming was immediately stunned. Feelings of guilt, shock, and fear came over him like a tidal wave, and fear even flashed in his eyes for a moment. The death of a son was not unfamiliar to Emperor Yongming, but death at the hands of others and death under his own orders were two different things, especially since Liang Malang was different from other sons. That kind of inner feeling cannot be described by the word collapse. Emperor Yongming turned his head and stared at Empress Dowager Lu in shock. I am afraid that only he knew what Empress Dowager Lu was doing like this at this time. Today, Prince Rong cried in front of him, saying that he wanted to prevent the crisis of heirs in the northern Qi dynasty. Liang Muibei died, but he didn't care. He loved the Queen Mother Lu, so he naturally loved Wu Jiwu and the son she gave birth to. Liang Mulin died. He didn't care, because his empire would be passed on to Liang Malang in the future, but Liang Malang also died. Emperor Yongming felt a chill all over his body, and his face trembled a little. When Prince Rong was worried that he might die, he was still sneering, thinking in his heart that he had a son, so it was impossible for him to die. These people were just ignorant people, and they knew what. But when he turned around, he saw that his son, who he had always thought would inherit Dabao, had died under the joint efforts of him and Queen Mother Lu. What kind of retribution was this? Your Majesty, it's the Zhou family, it's Lily Zhou." Empress Dowager Lu's eyes were red, her face was pale, and she yelled through gritted teeth. Her words quickly awakened the emperor who was originally guilty. Emperor Yongming was shocked and nodded. It is indeed Lily and the Zhou family. If it weren't for Lily, a vicious woman, or if it weren't for the Zhou family's sinister intentions. He secretly carried his son into the palace and mistakenly thought that the child was someone else's. How could he order the death of his beloved son? This is all the fault of the Zhou family and Lily Zhou. The Zhou family is very cruel. I want to kill the entire Zhou family, and behead all the Zhou family members, Emperor Yongming shouted in a dark voice. When Empress Dowager Lu heard this, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. Your Majesty, now Alung is gone, this child. People cannot be resurrected after death. Empress Dowager Lu had her son dug out before, just to prove whether the child was her Alung. She made such a decision in grief. Now she calmed down and waited for Emperor Yongming to come to Fengming again. During this period of time in the palace, I thought a lot, this child is just evidence. I want to avenge Ulung. Let the Zhou family deny it. Now Liang Malang is the most direct evidence that he can bring down the Zhou family. Although his son cannot be buried in peace after his death, Empress Dowager Lu will eventually avenge him, otherwise he will not be able to leave without peace of mind. Today's child was not only seen by Lily and the Zhou family, but also by the palace ladies. Empress Dowager Lu could not get another baby corpse to exchange for her son, but she secretly swore in her heart that she would wait until the Zhou family was after being overthrown. She will definitely ask a senior monk to perform a ritual ceremony for her son and chant sutras and praise Buddha for him. I hope he can be reincarnated as soon as possible. As for those who took the lives of their own sons today, Queen Mother Lu was not prepared to let anyone go. First, a Ji will die, and then she will die slowly one by one. Emperor Yongming also understood her feelings. Seeing Empress Dowager Lu crying so hard, he gently held her in his arms. He comforted in a low voice, "Don't worry, if Ulung knows something, he won't blame us. We will avenge him. There will be more children in the future. My empire will always be passed on to our children." As he talked, he got closer and closer, and the two of them rolled into a ball. At this time in Xianfu Palace, Beihe had received news from the Zhou family. The Zhou family and General Gao had joined forces and now controlled the entire capital. The emperor had been troubled by a series of things recently. First, there was Lu Ping's corruption, then there was the witchcraft incident in the harem, then there was the plague in the palace, and then there was the matter of Zhang Cain giving birth today. These things happened one after another, and he didn't notice the recent events at all. The Zhou and Gao families had contacted each other behind the scenes several times over the affairs of their female relatives. He thought that under his suppression, the Gao family and the Zhou family had become incompetent. He thought that Zhou Changsheng had been frightened by his previous beatings. Emboldened. When Emperor Yongming was thinking about how to uproot the Zhou family and the Gao family, General Gao had already taken advantage of the night guard exchange time in the palace to replace all the guards in the palace with his own people. When Emperor Yongming was still in Fengming Hall, he was having a quarrel with the Empress Dowager Lu, but he did not appear for a long time. Zhou Changsheng, who had been staying at home in the name of recuperating, had already led people to appear in the palace, and he was accompanied by important ministers of the court. The royal family members and other people were escorted by General Gao to Fengming Hall. When Xianfu Palace Lily got the news, she had already changed her clothes and prepared her chariot. You are going to rebel. You are so courageous." Prince Rong and others turned pale. The moon seemed to have received the news early tonight and hid in the clouds. Even with the palace lanterns lit, it felt unusually dark. The eunuchs in the palace all hid, as if they knew something was going to happen. All they could hear was the messy footsteps of a group of people and the harsh sound of armor rubbing against each other. General Gao was wearing a military robe embroidered with unicorns and carrying a sword. When he heard Prince Rong's angry scolding, he sneered, "Your Majesty, you are so grateful. I am here to kill the evildoer and set the course for the emperor." "Bah! You have disgraced all the ancestors of the Gao family." When the royal family members heard what General Gao said, they were extremely angry and cursed in unison. It is precisely because the Gao family is full of loyal people that now the ministers are loyal to the emperor and kill the prostitutes. At this point, the Gao family has long been forced to have no way out. As Zhou Changsheng said, the Gao family will also retreat. Even if you die, you will get a bad reputation after death. It is better to fight hard and at least save your life. General Gao himself is loyal to Northern Qi. Even if he is willing to die for Northern Qi, he still has his wife, children, and mother. He can die, but the Gao family cannot be extinct. They would all end up with the same outcome. He would rather take a gamble and lose, but the result would be the same. If he won, he would at least be able to keep the Gao family's seedlings. A group of men and horses tightly surrounded Fengming Hall, and heavy troops defended Fengming Hall like an iron barrel. The people in the palace had been sent away a long time ago. As the eunuch of Emperor Yongming, Sanfu might be well aware of what happened between the emperor and the queen mother, but he was very strict with his words and treated this matter like a deaf mute. Generally speaking, Emperor Yongming favored him very much just because of this. When he was hanging out with Empress Dowager Lu tonight, it was Sanfu who was guarding outside the palace gate. The palace servants and maids outside had been taken away silently. When Lily arrived, General Gao had already trapped the situation in the palace. The people outside had been taken down silently, but the people inside were still there. Uninformed. Sanfu was sitting in the palace gate. He always felt that the atmosphere tonight was strange and powerful. It was quiet outside. When the wind blew through the treetops, it seemed that the snow accumulated on the trees was falling down into the snowdrifts. At the same time, the voice made people feel a little chilly for no reason. This damn weather, because it was so deserted, Sanfu couldn't help but cursed. He stretched out his hand and rubbed the back of his hands, talking to himself to encourage himself. As soon as he said this, he felt that the palace was too quiet. He was startled. When he came back to his senses and stood up to look out, he saw a group of people walking along the corridor towards this place in the darkness. Come along. In the darkness of the night, because the moon was not out tonight, I couldn't see how many people there were. I could only vaguely hear the sound of footsteps on the wooden boards, which made them creak. Who is it? You dare to break into Fengming Palace without permission? Sanfu felt a chill on his back, and a bad premonition came into his heart, and he couldn't help but ask. The group of people were getting closer and closer, and the leader of the group, a royal concubine with a half-moon bun, a golden concubine's bow on her head, and a black cloak with red trim, walked towards the side step by step, with a smile on her face, and behind her General Gao, Zhou Chengsheng, and others in civil and military official robes followed. Seeing someone he was familiar with in the past, Sanfu was not only relieved, but his heart tightened. It is not common for General Gao to enter the palace, and he is still holding a sword. He cannot walk in the harem without being summoned by the emperor when entering and leaving the palace, not to mention that weapons are not allowed in the palace. Sanfu's heart tightened. Bold. Why did General Gao and Master Zhou break into the Fengming Palace without being summoned by the emperor? The emperor was still in the palace with the queen mother at this time. Under normal circumstances, once these two people stayed together, they would not come out for an hour or two. As soon as Sanfu finished speaking, General Gao had already drawn out the long sword from his waist, raised one corner of his mouth and cursed with a smile, "You dog slave." After saying that, he raised his hand and threw it hard, and the long sword was like an arrow piercing the air. Like an arrow, it flew towards Sanfu. When he saw something bad, he got up and wanted to scream, but he couldn't scream. He only heard a puff sound, and the sword penetrated his throat, and the force was so strong that he was dragged back. After taking 2 or 3 steps back, the sword cut off his trachea. He couldn't scream at all. He opened his mouth, and the blood was trapped in his throat. His face turned pale, and when he fell to the ground with a plop, he reached out to grab the button. The wooden board on the ground opened its mouth wide, like a fish out of water, but it couldn't make a sound. General Gao has such good skills. Lily held the heater and praised him, but General Gao smiled, "My wife praised me. I was scolded by this castrated dog a few days ago. I had long wanted to kill him, but now I feel happy." He still remembered the scene when Sanfu was called out by Emperor Yongming in the Tai Chi Palace and scolded and humiliated him. Now he can be considered as revenge. While speaking, Lily kept walking towards Fengming Palace. A group of people followed her and rushed in like a broken bamboo. Most of the people who stayed in Fengming Palace were Empress Dowager Lu and Emperor Yongming's confidants. When the palace people heard the noise outside and rushed out to block them, they were captured or killed by wolf-like soldiers. To be continued. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1157. In the main hall, Emperor Yongming had already sensed that something was wrong. He was originally at a vigorous age, but for some reason, he always felt a little uneasy tonight. I wonder if it was because of the death of his son that he asked Empress Dowager Lu twice. He was already feeling a little downhearted. This pink body that he used to love so much now felt so slippery that he felt a little hairy, like a fish. Empress Dowager Lu's enchanting face was sucking him tightly like a banshee. She hooked her hand around Emperor Yongming's neck. "Your Majesty." Emperor Yongming reached out to grab her pink arm, and was about to speak, but there was only a bang sound, and a row of screens blocking the hall was kicked down. Emperor Yongming's body suddenly softened, and he was about to turn his head to look at it in anger, but this sight made him scared. The imperial concubine Lily was standing in the palace holding a hand warmer, staring at the situation in the tent through a layer of gauze. Zhou Chengsheng, General Gao, the civil and military officials of the Manchu dynasty, and the royal family members who had not seen each other for many days were faced with this scene. All speechless. The clothes that he and Empress Dowager Lu had taken off were still scattered on the ground. Emperor Yongming felt a buzz in his head and stopped. At this moment, he only felt that his soul seemed to have separated from his body, and his body seemed not to obey his orders. He heard himself drink out of breath. Bold. There was no calmness and decisiveness in his voice. Instead, feelings of fear, nervousness, and shame all came to his heart, as if the darkest part of his heart was torn open and exposed to the sunshine without hesitation. The dirty things in my heart that I least wanted to be known about were now in front of everyone. This feeling is like being watched by a large number of people without even a piece of body. Emperor Yongming was the proud son of heaven in his life. He was the legitimate son when he was young and had a smooth journey to the throne. There had never been a moment like this when he felt scared, helpless and uneasy. The bold one is the emperor, although Zhou Chengsheng had already learned from his daughter that the emperor had an affair with the queen mother. We have even obtained evidence that the two of them had an evil offspring, but knowing it and seeing it with your own eyes are two different things. When the royal family and other relatives discovered this scene, they were almost stunned. Lily saw all this. The corners of his mouth curled up. Why did the emperor come to Fengming Hall? The late emperor's widow lives here. The emperor should avoid suspicion. Her voice was gentle and sweet, but when it was heard in Emperor Yongming's ears, it was like a bell ringing to remind him of his death. Empress Dowager Lu was frightened in her arms. Even though she had experienced death, she had experienced 2 generations of life in this palace, and she had seen more things than others. She was more courageous than ordinary people, but at this moment, she was still as helpless and frightened as a baby. Originally, she thought that Liang Malang was at her most helpless point when she died, but now, with everyone watching, she and the emperor were naked and hugging each other. This terrible feeling was far worse than when she was caught by Liang Yi and was about to be chopped. Her head is even more terrifying. At that time, there were signs of changes in Liang Yi's palace. But this time things happened without any warning. The only person she could rely on in front of her was Emperor Yongming. She knew that Emperor Yongming could not protect her at this time, and even Emperor Yongming might not be able to protect himself at this moment, but Empress Dowager Lu still shrank into Emperor Yongming's arms, trembling. "Get out," Emperor Yongming shouted in a panic. He never dreamed that the matter between himself and Queen Mother Lu would be exposed in front of everyone. Emotions such as fear, uneasiness, anxiety, and despair rushed towards him like a tide. Emperor Yongming shivered all over, and his body suddenly seemed to have lost its temperature. The palace was clearly burning with carbon fire. It was unusually warm, but he seemed to have been thrown naked into a snowdrift and buried under the cold snow. Why doesn't the emperor get up? Do you blame me for not waiting for the emperor to get up? Lily handed the heater in her hand to Shiking's hand and took off the snow-covered cloak. She took 2 steps and walked towards the bed. Zhou Chengsheng followed his daughter worriedly and watched her lift the curtain. The naked Emperor Yongming and the pale-faced young Queen Mother hugged each other on the bed. Zhou Chengsheng turned his head away. Everyone could see everything clearly. This kind of filth and sin was presented in front of a group of people. The faces of the royal family members were ashen and they were trembling so much that they could not speak. Emperor Yongming's eyes lost focus due to extreme fear and met Lily. His body seemed to be maintained in a fixed position and he could not move at all at the moment. He could see Lily looking at him and smiling. He wanted to shout, but couldn't make a sound. He wanted to get angry, but found that his face seemed to be too stiff to obey him. He seemed to have lost control of his body, and could only hear the beating sound of the blood vessels in his head. You could hear needles dropping in the main hall. Lily lowered the curtain again as if she had touched something unclean. Emperor Yongming even breathed a long sigh of relief because of her action, and his tense body seemed to relax. It's really disgusting, Lily sneered, took out the handkerchief from her sleeve, and wiped her fingers. Why did the emperor go to the wrong palace and get into the wrong bed? The only sound in the palace was her voice, and no one spoke for a while. In such a silence that was almost oppressive, Queen Mother Lu calmed down. Although she was also afraid, it was useless to be afraid when things got to this point. She had experienced death before, and she was much calmer than Emperor Yongming. Now she sat up, wrapped her body in a quilt, and shivered. With a pale face, he opened the curtain. What do you want? Although Empress Dowager Lu was ruthless, the courage she showed at this moment was 1,000 times better than Emperor Yongming. Emperor Yongming hid in the bed and did not dare to come out. When Lily looked at Empress Dowager Lu's beautiful face, she seemed like a beautiful flower lost. The color seemed to fade and he stared at himself closely. My concubine asked the Empress Dowager Lu what she wanted. Just because the Empress Dowager wanted to support the child born to the emperor to ascend the throne, the Empress Dowager regarded Mu Bei, the son of the concubine, as a thorn in her side and a thorn in her flesh. She wanted to get rid of him. Why are you telling her so much? Just cut her off with a knife, bitch. Prince Rong was so angry that his head was spinning and he spoke bitterly. Empress Dowager Lu sneered twice. After hearing this, Emperor Yongming on the bed shivered and sat up. Uncle Emperor, I know that I have made a mistake. I am ashamed of my ancestors. I was confused for a moment. Before he finished speaking, he glanced at Empress Dowager Lu who was standing aside. This whole thing started with me. From now on, I am willing to go to the late emperor's memorial tablet to confess my sins. I am also willing to send the Empress Dowager out of the palace and live her life outside the palace. Can you? Please. At this point, Emperor Yongming still wanted to save the lives of the two of them. Lily wanted to laugh when she heard this, and Zhou Chengsheng even let out a poof. Han Jun. It's in vain that the late emperor cherished you so much that you did such a heinous act today. What you did is simply unacceptable in heaven and earth. I know that my crime deserves death. I am willing to give up the throne, just for. At this moment, Emperor Yongming just wanted to save his life temporarily. The Gao family led troops into the palace, obviously to force the palace. He had no heirs. Now, as Prince Rong said, his son is dead, and he doesn't know who the throne will be passed on to. He just wants to retreat and save his life for the time being. Just for the sake of the late emperor. What qualifications does the emperor have to mention the late emperor? Lily interrupted Emperor Yongming, looking at the young and handsome emperor who had great glory in the past, now as embarrassed as a dog that had fallen into the water. The late emperor loved the emperor very much, but the emperor had an affair with the queen mother, which was simply shameless. The Empress Dowager Lu had vicious methods, killing Mu Bei, Liang Mulan, and concubine De, but the emperor indulged in every possible way. It was simply immoral. For the sake of the Empress Dowager Lu, the emperor is unclear about his public affairs, shielding the Lu family, staying away from loyal ministers, and staying close to virtuous people. He is unfilial to the late emperor, merciless to his heirs, and unjust to loyal ministers like the Gao family. Don't talk about giving up the throne to an unfilial, unjust, shameless, and ruthless villain like you. How can he be worthy of being called the emperor? Mr. Zhou is the emperor's mentor when it comes to public affairs, and he is the head of the country when it comes to private affairs. He is loyal to the northern Qi dynasty, but the emperor whipped him in public for the sake of Empress Dowager Lu. The Gao family has great military exploits, and General Gao died on the battlefield, but you let it go. It was Empress Dowager Lu who framed the Gao family, and concubine De was allowed to be falsely accused, and she still suffered infamy after her death. Lily scolded him coldly. Emperor Yongming's face turned red, his whole body was trembling, his hands clenched into fists, but he couldn't say a word at all. Queen Mother Lu leaned against him, listening to Lily say this, with a look of fear in her eyes. What she had done in the past was now being spread out by Lily, which made Queen Mother Lu feel like a mouse being caught by a group of cats. Chasing him into a corner, there is no way to avoid it. She didn't know why her life was so miserable. Every time she was about to succeed, she was ruined. Could it be that God allowed her to be reborn just to let her watch her fail again? The emperor has been familiar with the books of sages since he was a child, but he has read the principles and ethics in the dog's belly. If the late emperor has a spirit in heaven, I am afraid that he will be angry to death and come back to life. As soon as Lily said this, Emperor Yongming moved his Li cannon fodder strategy. Author, Wan ERWR. Chapter 1158. When she heard Lily calling Suho's name, Queen Mother Lu was stunned for a moment, and then a ferocious look appeared on her face. Outside, Suho came in holding things. These things were used by Queen Mother Lu to flirt with Emperor Yongming in the past. There are not only handkerchiefs, but also pockets and other personal belongings. On them are the jade seals of Emperor Yongming, as well as obscene poems and songs inscribed by him. Suho distributed it to the royal family members and civil and military officials one by one. When many people saw this, their faces turned red with embarrassment. Even if the emperor and the queen mother were framed for having an affair, and even if the emperor and the queen mother's intimate clothes might be stolen by their personal servants, the Emperor Yongming couldn't rely on the jade seal. Especially his calligraphy, Zhou Changsheng is the clearest. When Emperor Yongming was young, he was the first to read and practice calligraphy. Zhou Changsheng taught him the handwriting stroke by stroke. Seeing that the emperor whom he personally taught was now using his literary talents in such a place, Zhou Changsheng sneered twice and was so angry that he could not speak. Suho, Suho, Empress Dowager Lu gritted her teeth, never dreaming that it was Suho who betrayed her. Suho was so loyal to her that day. She never expected that Suho would betray her. What's more, Aji is in charge of these things, and she has hidden the key securely. There are so many things there, and if Aji doesn't tell them, Suho will look for them and won't know where the boxes are. In other words, Aji also betrayed himself. Empress Dowager Lu's face was ashen, while Emperor Yongming was completely confused. He lowered his head in panic, not daring to look at the people in front of him. He could clearly hear every word and every sentence they said, but he said something. Emperor Yongming only felt that his mind was blank. What else can the Queen Mother say now? Lily picked up a pair of obscene trousers, which still had the imprint of the phoenix seal held by the Queen Mother Lu, and wrote a poem, "The milk swallow flies to the Huahua house. No one is around, the Tongyian turns to noon, take a new bath in the evening. Use your hand to make a raw silk and white round fan. Lily read this. The corner of his mouth curled up. What a song to congratulate the bridegroom. The beauty has already taken a bath. Who is waiting for her to come? The evidence is conclusive, and now Empress Dowager Lu is denying it again. She couldn't rely on him at all. She stared at Lily coldly. You have the ability to make a cheap maid like Suho use you, although she was afraid in her heart, but the matter had come to this, there was no use being afraid. She had died once. The people who came back would only die one more time at most, but Empress Dowager Lu was very unwilling to do so. Hope was destroyed again and again, which was more painful than killing her and ripping out her heart. Once unfaithful, 100 times unfaithful. Suho will betray me today, and he will kill you in the future. She was resentful in her heart and cursed in her mouth. Lily laughed. That doesn't bother the Queen Mother. As the saying goes, God will help you when you are in good ways, but few will help you when you are in bad ways. The Queen Mother has experienced this truth twice, and you still don't understand. As soon as Lily said these words, Queen Mother Lu's expression changed drastically again, and she was stunned for a moment. Emperor Yongming also raised his head, with a confused look on his face. Seeing his appearance, Lily suddenly slapped her head. Oh, my concubine, haven't you told the emperor yet? The origin of Empress Dowager Lu is not simple. In the previous dynasty, she doted on concubine Zheng, who was the most favored in the harem. Empress Zheng. Your Majesty. It's not just the late emperor's successor who is sleeping, but the great-grandfather's concubine. Her words stunned Zhou Chengsheng and General Gao. The royal family members were also confused, and Queen Mother Lu turned pale. My biggest secret is a secret that I keep tightly in my heart and never reveal a word to anyone. At this moment, she was torn apart and spread out in front of her. She was suddenly more frightened than before. She turned to look at Emperor Yongming, only to see Emperor Yongming's eyes widening, as if he had seen a ghost. You're talking nonsense. Empress Dowager Lu felt that her voice was trembling, and it didn't sound convincing. Whether my concubine is talking nonsense, the Queen Mother knows best. It was precisely because she did not secure the position of queen back then, and her son could not ascend to the throne of God even after her death, so the Empress was unwilling to give in, and was reborn in Lu's body after death. Charming king, you like the Peony Pavilion, and Du Liniang in the Peony Pavilion is the one who came back to life after death. Does the emperor still remember? Lily asked Emperor Yongming, his teeth rattled. The living can die, the dead you can give birth. Does your Majesty still remember the 2 lines of lyrics that were sung when the queen was born that day? Emperor Yongming was sweating like rain on his forehead, looking like his end was approaching. Concubine Zheng's son is named Liang Yulang. I'm afraid she was reborn and gave birth to a son with the emperor. He should also have a son with the word Lang. Concubine Zheng was fond of plum blossoms during her lifetime, and I'm afraid the emperor is very clear about her preference. Every time Lily said something, Yongming was stunned. The emperor felt as if he had seen a ghost and desperately wanted to get further away from Empress Dowager Lu. She was once the emperor's great-grandfather's favorite concubine and the late emperor's relic. Now she has an affair with the emperor. She is here to harm Northern Qi and seek revenge on the emperor. She hates the Zhou family because my concubine's great-grandfather Zhou Zhenli once committed suicide. Oops, she wanted to save Taiji's life. She hated the Gao family because it was the Gao family who hanged her that day. Now all the emperor's heirs have died in her hands. So far, no direct bloodline of the Liang family in the royal family has survived. Can the emperor return the favor? Are you satisfied with this ending? No one died after his death, and he was shameless to see the late emperor. Because of his filthy moral character, he was not even qualified to enter the imperial mausoleum. Emperor Yongming's mind was buzzing. He saw Empress Dowager Lu. That charming face seemed to be disgusted by a ghost at this moment. He suddenly screamed, "Ah, don't come over, don't." He jumped up like crazy, pushed the lily in front of him, and rushed out naked. I have been ordered by heaven, and I am the common master of the world. Go away, I am not a foolish king, no. Queen Mother Lu's face turned pale. How did you know? At this point, she just didn't want to admit it, and it was impossible. Lily glanced at her. I guess. What a good guess. Queen Mother Lu wanted to laugh, but she couldn't. She regretted it. When she saw Lily's face, she felt chills in her heart. That day, she saw that Lily Jo was being smart, and thought that since she had great skills and was a reborn person, there was no reason why she couldn't deal with the princess, so she didn't take her seriously. Unexpectedly, she provoked such a lunatic, and even attracted such a person today. A fatal disaster. If he hadn't provoked her that day and attacked Liang Mulan first, wouldn't it mean that nothing would have happened to his son now and she wouldn't have ended up like this? She was always like this, acting too impulsively, which forced Liang Yi to despair and finally had to kill her. Now she is back, forcing Lily to take revenge, harming herself and her two sons in succession. Now I'm here to send the Queen Mother off. When Lily spoke, someone from the palace had already brought out the silk cloth. The situation was exactly the same as that time. The fear when her neck was strangled and the pain when she couldn't breathe made Queen Mother Lu suddenly. She collapsed. She screamed and wanted to run away, but two palace attendants stepped forward and held her up on one side and the other. However, before Empress Dowager Lu died, she struggled fiercely. The two palace attendants heard that she was a reborn ghost and were frightened. Unable to catch her, she struggled away. She wanted to rush out of the palace, but her expression was really similar to that of a ghost. General Gao snorted coldly, "What kind of dead people have I never seen? I'm not afraid of ghosts." He reached out and grabbed the white silk in the plate. With a flick of his wrist, the white silk seemed to come to life. The belt was put around Queen Mother Lu's neck. General Gao turned his head to one side and tightened his wrists. Queen Mother Lu struggled desperately. Her long, well-maintained nails stained with dandruff clawed at General Gao's chest. She struggled to breathe. The neck bones were quickly broken by the neck, the eyes were widened and quickly filled with blood, the tongue was stuck out, and the expression was extremely ferocious. After the death, Empress Dowager Lu looked unwilling. General Gao drew out his long sword and decapitated the owl. The head rolled down and rolled twice on the ground before the headless body fell to the ground with a bang. As soon as Empress Dowager Lu died, half of the source of trouble in the palace had been eliminated. Everyone cleaned up the mess, and Zhou Chengsheng drafted an edict. He wrote in the tone of Emperor Yongming that he had abdicated. However, before the edict was written, the palace people sent word that the Empress of Taiji Palace was the emperor. Died. His hair was disheveled, covering his cheeks, and he was hung from the beam. This way of death was obviously because Emperor Yongming was shameless and was afraid of meeting the late emperor after his death. The bell rang in the palace. Zhou Chengsheng sighed and said before he died. The written edict was thrown to the ground. This night passed extremely long, and concubine Xian was very frightened in the palace. She was involved in this accident. If Lily wins, she will naturally survive. If Lily fails, I am afraid that she and the Guo family will be together. Their lives are at risk. She chanted sutras all night long, and when the sky in the east grew brighter and she heard the bell ringing, indicating the emperor's death, concubine Xian sighed and cried. Emperor Yongming died too suddenly, because he had no heirs, so after discussion by the civil and military officials of the Manchu dynasty, they adopted a side branch of the clan. Lily became the queen mother because of her merits in eliminating adultery, assisting the young master, and wielding great power. The virtuous concubine in the palace has become the dowager. Lu Wanyi has no heirs and her status is not high, so she is confined in the palace. As for An Shui, a native of Yunnan and Guizhou, his status was too low and he was sent to become a nun. When she left the palace with a group of talented people and beauties, she was already in a daze. People from Yunnan and Gazhou were fighting over each other. Within a few days of the good life, she experienced the end of her son's death and her becoming a nun. Thinking about it now, she was shocked. It's better than an RU to follow concubine Xian and at least get a good ending. When she leaves, it is conceivable that her parents and relatives will be affected by her. Her temporary greed was taken advantage of by the Empress Dowager Lu, and now she regrets it. Jiang Kainu left with a group of people leaving the palace. Lily checked her name off the list of monks and let her go with the scholar. On the day when these people left the palace, their cries were loud. Concubine Xian sat next to Lily and watched her using a pen to mark the papers. Shang 11 was waiting beside her with a respectful look, and said with some envy, "I will be released from the palace today as a nun. The person is gone." Lily nodded, and a Ji came in. "Mother, Zhang has left." She suffered some hardships in the Shenxing division, but with the death of Empress Dowager Lu and the fall of Emperor Yongming, the Lu family raised such a daughter, and a big disaster occurred. Lu Shen had no time to kill her that day, but Lily finally saved her. When she came down, she was frightened and feared that she would be retaliated by the remnants of the Lu family after going out, so she chose to stay in the palace. After the matter was settled, the Lu family had only half knowledge of what the Empress Dowager Lu had done. The entire direct family of the Lu family was executed and all the other branches were exiled. To be continued. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan ERWR. Chapter 1159. The Northern Qi dynasty was renamed the later Qi dynasty, and by he was in charge of the government until the new emperor came of age, when he returned the power to the emperor. History records that Emperor Yongming died of a sudden illness, and Empress Dowager Lu was implicated because of the Lu family's corruption. However, there are still rumors of a romantic affair between Empress Dowager Lu and Emperor Yongming. Gender, female, variable. Name, Lily. Age, 21. Intelligence, 90, out of 100. Appearance, 95, out of 100. Physical strength, 90, full score of 100. Force, 95, out of 100. Spirit, 91, out of 100. Reputation, 11, out of 100 points. Skills, 9 Yang Manual, 9 Yin Manual, Tiandamen Tao Ti Ching, Zone, Southern Territory Gu Technique, Star Training Technique. Specialties, Advanced Cooking Skills, Advanced Acting Skills, 5 Elements and Bagua Skills, Proficient, B Control Skills. Charisma, 60, out of 100. Mark, Royal True Dragon Spirit. This time, in addition to the increase in force value, the reputation value has also increased. This may have something to do with Lily being in charge of the government during this mission. But it is precisely because of her low reputation that during the mission, even if she became the emperor after the Queen Mother, the ministers in the court were very worried, fearing that a Queen Mother would seize power. She would not criticize her behind the scenes until she returned to the emperor later. A little more. This butterfly-shaped earring is very special. It is a small insect series designed by the emerging designer Anna Su. It is smart and lively and is suitable for girls. "Miss, would you like me to put it on for you?" An enthusiastic female voice rang in Lily's ears, and she felt herself nodding. When she opened her eyes, she saw the black velvet on the jewelry tray in front of her. There is a pair of earrings made of sapphires. It is in the shape of 2 fluttering butterflies, which are about to fly. The butterfly tentacles are made of platinum and inlaid with a small diamond. Paired with gemstones, it gives it an innocent and dreamy look, which is indeed very beautiful. The girl selling jewelry wore a black glove with one hand, and gently turned Lily's face away with the other hand, and put the earrings on her ears. After installing the base, he pushed the mirror on the counter and said, "Miss, You can take a look at it yourself. Does it look good? It looks really good. In the mirror, the girl wearing a white shirt and a long ponytail is young, but she has bright and white teeth. Youth is the best cosmetic, cheeks that can be broken by blowing, her eyes are clear in black and white, and her eyelashes are long and curled. When he turns his head, the graceful curve of his jaw and his slender and elegant neck are revealed. She pursed her lips. The fine fuzz on her skin made it look like she was powdered. When the earrings were worn on her neck, her skin became even fairer. Lily reached out and subconsciously touched the earrings. She was not a showy type. Also very unique. It looks really good. The salesperson could clearly see that she liked it, and the smile at the corner of her mouth couldn't help but get deeper. Let me put it on for you. Your skin is fair, and wearing this will show off your temperament. What the girl selling jewelry said was not nonsense. Yes, those butterfly earrings are worn on Lily's ears, which make the earlobe skin crystal clear and very pleasant. When Lily heard this, she subconsciously reached out and touched her waist. There was a small bag hanging there. The body of the bag was light blue, the most popular color this year. She opened the bag. He took out a small wallet from it. When the salesperson saw her action, his eyes narrowed with laughter, but when Lily opened the wallet, there were only 3 100 yuan bills inside, as well as some trivial change. On the price tag of the jewelry, there is the word yuan written on it. The money she brought was not even a small change, but the bag was packed very neatly. In addition to the wallet, there was also a small cosmetic bag, which contained a lipstick, an eyebrow pencil, mascara, and a small bottle that seemed to be given as a trial. Contains perfume. In addition, there was only a bank card, but it was obvious from the clothes the original owner was wearing and the bag she was carrying that she simply could not afford the 30,000 yuan. I'm sorry, I don't want it anymore. Lily touched the earrings and shook her head. The salesperson who was about to take the paper bag suddenly became a little reluctant. He stretched out his hand and pushed the mirror. Miss, look at it again. It really matches you. Besides, this kind of insect series jewelry is really rare. The design the teacher released the set of inspiration this year, and it is also a limited edition. If you miss it, you will lose it. How about you try the dragonfly pendant just now, which is made of peridot. Lily shook her head and said directly, I don't have enough money. As soon as she said this, the salesperson couldn't persuade her anymore. There was a look of disappointment on her face, and her smile became colder. Lily took off the earrings from her ears and didn't even want to say anything more. She didn't mind her attitude. When she came out of the jewelry counter, Lily took a deep breath. There was a lounge for shoppers in the mall. The air conditioning was on. There weren't many people at the moment. She opened the glass door and went in. Picked a corner seat and sat down, put the bag on his lap, and then began to take in the plot this time. Li Bei was born in an ordinary family. Her mother, Zhang Lian, has been a housewife all her life, and her father is a clerk in a work unit. She supports the family with a moderate salary. She lives an ordinary life. Although she has no worries about food and clothing, her life is absolutely nothing to do with wealth. Lily has been good looking since she was little. When Lily was taken out of the house by her parents, many people would look at her in surprise, praising her and saying, "This girl of yours is so pretty." She was indeed pretty, especially after she reached junior high school. More and more people sent her love letters. The Le family always had the most letters among family members in the community. Neighbors always said that such a beautiful girl would marry someone in the future. It's okay for a rich person to be a young mistress. There is a family named Joe next door to Lee's family. They and Lee's father have been in the same work unit since childhood. When the work unit allocated welfare housing, because of the good relationship between the two families, they also bought the door to each other and became neighbors. The Le family has a beautiful daughter, and the Zhou family also has a very handsome son. At first, Li's father and Zhou's father had a very good relationship, so the two families had frequent contacts. When he was a child, Zhou's father joked that the two families were married. They will have a baby kiss, and when the children of both parties grow up, they will get married, turning friends into in-laws. It was such a joke, and both families were happy to see it come to fruition. The son of the Zhou family, Zhou Zhan, was handsome. After reaching middle school, he excelled in basketball, sports, and academic performance, and became the leader of the #1 middle school in the county. Damn, because his parents always joked that Li Beihe was his future wife when he was young. When he was young, he even called Li Beihe his wife. After junior high school, boys and girls started to have some understanding of the opposite sex. Zhou Zhan called him Li Beihe's wife when he was young. Because of being teased by others, the young boy was shy and had been hiding from Li Lily for 3 years in junior high school. It was not until high school that the two entered the same school again and gradually got together. After entering high school, Li Beihe and Zhou Zhan no longer stayed in a small county town, but were admitted to a key high school in the capital city of China. Once they left the county town, although Zhou Zhan was still handsome, due to there were so many people, Zhou Zhan was no longer the most outstanding among them, but Li Beihe's beauty was still dazzling even after entering high school. Perhaps it was because Zhou Zhan started to fall in love as he got older, the two of them didn't distinguish who was pursuing the other, they seemed to get together naturally. As for Li Beihe, it was because she had entered high school and her horizons had broadened that she realized that compared to her classmates in the dormitory, except for her beauty, none of them could compare to others. In a place like Kyoto, there are a lot of rich people. If you pick one at random, she may come from an extraordinary family. Her family is not rich enough for others. No matter how beautiful she is not as good at dressing up as others. Her simple clothes looked rustic in front of her classmates, and her family background was not as deep as others. Whenever her classmates talked about the popular skirt styles in Beijing, as well as the most popular jewelry, bags, and cosmetics abroad this year, she couldn't compare to others. The sisters in the dormitory once said that if Li Beihe could dress up, not to mention being in the same grade, she is probably the most outstanding among the whole school. Growing up, Li Beihe always heard people praise her. This was the first time she heard people say that she was not as good as others. She once went out with her classmates to see the world and watched people shopping in shopping malls and jewelry stores. She liked it. After buying things, she was dazzled by the dazzling array of merchandise and all kinds of jewelry. She loves jewelry and these sparkling things. She likes beautiful dresses and bags. She likes to use all kinds of cosmetics to make herself look more beautiful. She herself often goes to the mall, but the money her mother gave her was not enough to buy a small item in this shopping mall, so she started working on her own to make money. Zhou Zhan didn't understand this very much. He had conflicts with her over this and told her many times, but she couldn't control herself at all. She spent all her spare time working, and all the money she earned from working was bought in Zhou Zhan's store. Zhan looked like she would have no use for her future life, including skirts, bags, and all kinds of girly gadgets. The two childhood sweethearts had a conflict over this for the first time. Li Beihe wanted to apologize to him, but she couldn't control her love for these things at all. Even if she didn't buy them just for Zhou Zhan's sake, she still couldn't help thinking about it afterwards. You will feel extremely wronged. When she and Zhou Zhan had conflicts, Mi Xiangting, who lived in the same dormitory, always acted as Li Beihe's best friend to mediate between the two. Mi Xiangting's background was slightly better than Li Beihe's. Her mother ran a clothing store. Compared with other girls in the dormitory, her background is slightly worse, but she is better than Li Beihe. Usually when the other people in the dormitory are chatting, the two people with poor backgrounds are always relatively speechless. It is precisely because of this, the two of them were naturally excluded from this group of little princesses in the capital, and they hugged each other faintly. On weekdays, whether in class or after school, we always stay together. To be continued. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan Erwr. Chapter 1160. Miss Yangting is full of praise for Zhou Zhan. Zhou Zhan has good grades, is handsome, plays basketball well, and is tall. He is very caring and considerate to Li Beihe. He always cares about her in the past and has a better personality than his peers. In Miss Yangting's opinion, Zhou Zhan is a mature and steady person. After the two got into trouble because of Li Lily's love for shopping, her inner balance gradually shifted to Zhou Zhan's side, thinking that Li Lily was too pampered. Sensible. After Li Beihe and Zhou Zhan made peace several times, the two gradually came together. When Li Beihe found out, Zhou Zhan broke up with her. After knowing this, Li's father felt unhappy. He originally regarded Zhou Zhan as his son-in-law. After knowing that the two were already together, he even had a drink with Zhou's father because of this. The children of the two families, everyone in the neighborhood knew what happened between them, but now it seemed to everyone that Zhou and Li's family had already had a wedding banquet, but Li Beihe was given a break because of his vanity. When Zhou's father saw Li's father, he looked embarrassed, but secretly he was talking to Li Beihe, a beautiful girl. The Zhou family didn't have such a big appetite to eat, saying that the Zhou family couldn't defeat her because she wanted too much. And the Zhou family is just an ordinary family and cannot afford to give her what she wants. When such news reached Li's father's ears, Li's father was furious, and the relationship with Zhou's father that had been friends for more than 10 years was gradually severed. In school, Li Beihe was very famous among her peers because of her beauty. Because of her vanity, her excellent boyfriend broke up with her, which attracted a lot of criticism. Everyone was laughing at her behind her back, saying that she was a money-worshipping girl. Many boys who had failed to pursue her in the past laughed at her, saying that she loved money and jewelry rather than go out and sell them. She completed 3 years of high school. My academic performance plummeted. Because my grades in the college entrance examination were not satisfactory, I only chose an ordinary university. After graduation, I found an ordinary job. Same as her parents. She saved most of her money from work to buy her favorite bags and jewelry. At work, her colleagues laughed at her for being pretentious and just an ordinary woman. She is pretty good looking, but she pretends to buy a famous brand. Many people buy fake ones that have the same appearance as her, but the price is very different. Many people made fun of her because she was very distant from others in the work unit. Because of the influence of her first love and the fact that she doesn't like the internet very much, her biggest hobby after work is shopping and her life is trapped between 2 points and 1 line. In addition, due to environmental reasons, she was limited from meeting good men. When she was 30 years old, under the pressure of her parents, she met a man on a blind date and got married. After marriage, the man still had conflicts because of her preference for jewelry and other issues, and even made fun of her. He thought she was vain and money-worshipping, and they ended up having a quarrel for several years and ended up getting divorced. Li's father and mother were very disappointed with her, thinking that she could not live a good life, but she insisted on going through troubles, which made her not only have a bad life, but also her parents became a laughingstock in the eyes of others. Although he felt sorry for his daughter, Li's father still let her return to her parents' home when Li Beihe divorced. However, her parents were also very unforgiving of Li Beihe's behavior. A woman of her age, over 30. Still don't let parents worry. The marriage is gone, the children are gone, and everything of her own is gone. There is only a bunch of things that she has bought and treated as treasures over the years. But it was something useless in Lee's father's opinion. After a quarrel, Lee's father threw away all Lily's things in a rage. The relationship between father and daughter has become cold. He didn't understand it very much. She just liked beautiful things and liked to dress herself up beautifully. Everyone has their own right to pursue things. She was vain and worshipped money, but she made money by her own ability and did not affect others. She is living a life that always makes others dislike her. The troublesome thing about this mission was that he didn't have any aspirations. She just couldn't figure it out and didn't know if she was really wrong, so in the end, her childhood sweetheart Joe Jean broke up with her, which caused her to be ostracized by her colleagues at work. This led to the breakdown of her marriage and the relationship between her and her father, to the point where Lee's father wouldn't even look at her when she called her father. When Lily opened her eyes, she couldn't help but smile twice. The original owner had no wish. Although she has done so many missions, in Lily's heart, she still feels that missions that the original owner has no intention of are the most troublesome. This kind of mission seems to have no goal, and you don't know which direction to work hard, giving people a sense of uncertainty. A sense of unreliability. The original owner's death was not a tragic one. Although she grew old alone, her end was not the worst compared to the miserable endings of many missionaries in other plot missions. The plot of this mission also has a beginning and an end. It's not that it's not finished. At this point, we can only take one step at a time. Lily sighed, touched her ears, and stood up. In the plot, this day is 1 month after the original owner entered her freshman year of high school. She had just moved into the dormitory. After the military training in the first half month, she went shopping with a group of girls in the dormitory and saw the prosperity of the capital. This made her, previously the original owner, who was confined to the county, seemed to have his eyes opened suddenly. She likes beautiful jewelry and all kinds of jewelry. This weekend, she went to the mall with a few $100s, but her money couldn't buy anything in the mall, not even in those 300 or 400 years. Even if she took out all the living expenses of 1,000 yuan from the card, she would not be able to buy a fraction of the jewelry she sees today. Today, the original owner bought a bottle of perfume. It was precisely because of the purchase of this bottle of perfume that the original owner did not even eat dinner in the name of losing weight in the next month. At that time, Joe Jean accidentally found out that she would not care about her body. He also knew that she had spent all her money on a bottle of perfume, read her a few words, and invited her to dinner every day for the next few days. She spent 3 years in junior high school. The two people who were strangers gradually became familiar with each other again. This incident can be regarded as the trigger for the two to be together later. Now that things have happened, since Lily has taken over the body of the original owner, it is naturally impossible to give Joe Jean this chance again. Joe Jean had brought harm to the original owner, and the original owner had never thought about renewing this relationship. Since she had no particularly strong request, Lily naturally was not prepared to have anything to do with Joe Jean anymore. This mission was a bit troublesome. The original owner didn't have any wishes. The only thing she liked was buying things. She enjoyed the satisfaction when buying things. Joe Jean once said that she was a materialistic girl. The original owner tried to change, but failed in the end. Lily is not prepared to change the original owner's character. Since the original owner likes to buy things, she will buy them too, but she will do what she can. It was the end of the first month after school. A few days ago, Lee's father had already transferred 1,000 yuan to her card. Lee's father was also worried that his daughter was too beautiful, that she would not have enough money to spend, and that she would not be able to withstand the temptation of others and go astray. Therefore, he tried his best to give his daughter money as much as he could. His monthly salary was more than 4,000 yuan. In addition to giving his daughter 1,000 yuan, he used the remaining money to go to work and for household expenses. Lee's mother also had to save some to pay for her daughter. Tuition fees and life are tight. Coke's father was still worried that his daughter would not have enough money to spend, so he would always pay 5 or 6 days in advance every month. At this moment, there were more than 300 yuan in Lily's bag and 1000 yuan in the card. After thinking about it, she turned around and entered the mall. Walked out of the jewelry counter. The girl's beautiful and clean nails were actually not suitable for being stained by nail polish. She couldn't use cosmetics at all because of her age. If she wanted better bags and clothes, this little money would not be enough. So she turned around and went to the skincare products counter like the original owner, but instead of buying more than 800 perfumes like the original owner, she bought a brand of fruity lip balm. When she paid, she felt a surge of emotion in her heart. With a little bit of joy, I collected my things and left the mall. When she returned to the dormitory, only Miss Yangting was there. Today is the weekend. The group of little princesses in the dormitory are all locals. They go home every Saturday and only come back on weekend nights. Only Li Beihe and Miss Yangting are from outside the dormitory. Usually on Saturday nights there are only 2 people are here. When Lily came back, Miss Yangting took a physics book and read it. In the first year of high school, classes had not yet been divided into classes, and subjects such as language, mathematics, chemistry, and physics were required to be learned. Miss Yangting had a mosquito net hanging on her bed. She heard the noise and opened the mosquito net. When she saw Lily coming back, her eyes lit up. "Lily, you are back, have you had dinner? Let's go out to eat together?" There are also people in the school cafeteria on weekends, and because it is a key high school in Beijing, the food actually tastes not bad, but boys and girls are always fresh about everything outside. Once weekends come, restaurants near the school are always popular. Yes, we often see students going out to eat in groups. Miss Yangting has been in this high school for nearly a month. During the days when she moved into the dormitory, she always felt that she was out of tune with the other people in the dormitory. When she was in junior high school, her family was relatively well off. Her mother owned a clothing store and had a lot of money every month. With a profit of about 10,000 yuan, she is not stingy. Her pocket money has been the largest since she was in junior high school. While others spent 100 yuan a week on living expenses, her parents gave her 500 yuan a month, and everyone around her surrounded her. After she got to college, her parents raised her living expenses to 3,000 yuan. She originally thought that she was already rich enough, but she didn't expect that compared with the people in the dormitory, she fell behind again. There are a total of 6 people living in a dormitory. The dormitory environment is good, equipped with air conditioning, water heater, and separate toilet. Among these 6 people, except Miss Yangting and Li Beihe, among the other 4 people, one family is in the fur business, and the other family is in the business. In the company, another girl's father is an agent, and the one with the highest background is probably Sun Mingming. Her grandfather was a senior official in Nanhua province. Sun's father used his father's connections to later join Nanhua as the municipal party committee secretary. With such a background even in school, he is very conspicuous. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 1161. The 4 people in the dormitory with good backgrounds, led by Sun Mingming, hugged each other tightly. Although Miss Yangting used to think that her background was not bad and her family background was not bad, compared with these people, she couldn't compare to them in everything, even if it was tough. As the conversation continued, she couldn't get in the middle of a few words about foreign things or foreign attractions. At best, she had read what these girls said in online books. The girl herself also had self-esteem. As time went by, she didn't like chatting with these people in the dormitory because she was afraid that others would look down on her. Fortunately, she is not as good as the others in the dormitory, but she is much better than Lily. Even her living expenses are more than 3 times more than Lily. Seeing that Sun Mingming and others not only ignored her, but also had a bad relationship with Li Beihe, Mi Xiangting became particularly enthusiastic about Li Beihe and felt like she wanted to form a team with her. At this moment, Lily had just come back, and Mi Xiangting said hello to Lily and invited her out for dinner. In the plot, Mi Xiangting and Zhou Zhan achieved good things in the end. They fell in love in high school, encouraged each other to enter the university of their choice, and got married after graduation. It was precisely because of their marriage that in the end, their parents felt helpless. Faced with the old neighbors, he didn't like to listen to the Zhou family's advice, so he hurriedly sold the house at a low price and later bought another place. But later the place where Legia was located was demolished, and the Zhou family was also allocated a good house because of the demolition. The Legia family, on the other hand, was originally in the same situation as the Zhou family, but after the move, the old house was not included in the demolition scope, until Lefa when Lemu passed away, the old community was still not demolished. It is precisely because of this that the gap between the two families who originally had similar family backgrounds naturally became wider and wider. Lily was not prepared to break up with Mi Xiangting. Although the breakup between the original owner and Zhou Zhan was due to Mi Xiangting. But what's more important is the difference in personality and hobbies between the original owner and Zhou Zhan. Even if there is no Mi Xiangting, there will still be Li Xiangting. But she also has no intention of becoming friends with Mi Xiangting like in the plot. After all, rabbits don't eat grass from the edge of their nest. Even if the original owner and Zhou Zhan had problems, it was an indisputable fact that Mi Xiangting had pried off her best friend's boyfriend. When she heard Mi Xiangting invite her to go out to eat together, Lily shook her head. "I just came back from outside, you go and eat." Oh, Mi Xiangting responded with some disappointment, retracted her head again, and poked her head out again after a while. "Where did you go to play this weekend?" The friendship between the two was not as deep as it was later, and now Lily could see that Mi Xiangting didn't mean to pry. She was just asking out of curiosity, so she smiled and said, "I went to look around, shopped for a while, and bought a lip balm." Hearing that Lily had gone out to buy things, Mi Xiangting felt an uncomfortable feeling in her heart. In the dormitory, what Sun Mingming and others talked about most was not their studies, but clothes, bags, jewelry, celebrities, and foreign things. When it comes to comics and imported objects, Mi Xiangting can't say a word. Mi Xiangting is very impatient when other people in the dormitory usually talk about these things, but she can't speak in front of these people. So when others were discussing what looked good, she curled up on the bed and read a book. At least in Mi Xiangting's opinion, even though her family background was not as good as that of Sun Mingming and others, and her appearance was not as good as Li Beihe's, in terms of grades, there is no way these people can compare with her. She is also very proud of her hard work. Originally, she thought that Li Beihe would be the same existence as herself in the dormitory, but she didn't expect that when she asked casually, she heard that Lily said that she also went out to walk around and bought a lip balm. Mi Xiangting endured it. We are still students. In fact, it is useless to apply these things too much. The skin is already good. She suppressed the dissatisfaction in her heart. After saying this, he asked again, "How much did you buy it for?" "More than 100." As soon as she finished saying this, Mi Xiangting frowned. "Buying something so expensive? Don't imitate Sun Mingming and others. What is their origin? What is your origin? Your father. It's not easy for mom to make money. I give you tuition and living expenses so that you can go to school, not for you to compare with others." Mi Xiangting felt uncomfortable and spoke a little harshly. She also said such harsh words in the plot, but at that time Li Beihe and she were already best friends in name, and she said these words to mediate between Zhou Zhan and Li Beihe. Li Beihe was also criticized by Zhou Zhan at that time, and she did feel that she was at fault. Therefore, when Miss Yangting said these words, she also tried to change. But now the two of them had known each other for less than a month, and the original owner and Miss Yangting had not become close to each other later. Lily was not afraid of offending when she said this: "When I buy things, it's not your money that I spend. My parents didn't care about me, why do you care about me?" Originally, Miss Yangting thought she had good intentions, but she didn't expect Lily to be unappreciative and think she was nosy. A sudden anger welled up in her heart. She put down the mosquito net with a cold face and snorted. "Whatever you want, it's none of my business anyway." The atmosphere in the dormitory became awkward, and Lily didn't care. She went into the toilet, washed her feet, changed into slippers, and then lay down on the bed. In addition to liking beautiful things and dressing up, the original owner was actually very well behaved and kept all her basic things organized. She was the only one in the dormitory who folded all the quilts neatly and put her things away. She is very regular in appearance, loves to be clean and hard-working, and has a certain degree of neatness. Although she is as young as a flower, she has a quiet personality. She doesn't like to fight with others, and she doesn't take advantage of her beauty to tease boys. She has been there since elementary school. By junior high school, my grades were very good. After junior high school, I was admitted to Jingli No. 1 Middle School on my own merit. It is precisely because of this that Lee's father and Lee's mother looked at this precious daughter like eyeballs and doted on her as much as possible. The neighbors next door also praised her when she was a child. It was precisely because her parents had high expectations for Ellie Behi that she was born here. Later, after Ellie Behi had a stain, she was so disappointed in her. Most of the people who can get into Shendu No. 1 Middle School are those with top academic performance. Although the school does not strictly require students to do evening self-study on Saturday and weekend evenings, most students will show up in the classroom. In the evening, after Lily had dinner in the cafeteria, she also went to the classroom. There were about 60 people in the class, and at least half of the tables and chairs were full. Downstairs is a small basketball court. From time to time in the quiet classroom, you can hear the sound of basketballs being slapped on the ground, which makes the classroom even more quiet. You can even hear the rustle of students turning the pages of books. Get. The monthly exam will be in 2 days. In the first month, students will be seated according to their height and each other's preferences. In the second month, the seats will be adjusted based on their scores. There was no exam yet, because the original owner met Miss Yangting when he entered the dormitory, so the two naturally sat together. After those 2 words in the evening, the two parted on bad terms, and now they both looked a little embarrassed when they sat together. When everyone was reading quietly, a tall and thin figure came in at the door of the classroom with his hands in his pockets. Everyone looked up and many girls in the classroom had their eyes wandering. Lily also looked up subconsciously and recognized it at a glance as Fu Ying. Even though it has only been a month since the first grade of high school started, Fu Ying's name is famous not only among the first grade students, but also in the entire No. 1 Middle School. He attended No. 1 Middle School when he was in middle school, and was directly recommended to high school by his headquarters. It was said that he had a good background. When he was in middle school, someone saw his head teacher speaking in a flattering tone when talking to him. He has good grades and is very tall. Many girls in the class are at an age where they are ignorant and in love, and they secretly have a crush on him. Even Sun Mingming and others in the dormitory, who were already out of reach in Mi Xiangting's opinion, were talking about him behind his back. In the plot, he studied in No. 1 Middle School for 2 years and won many honors for No. 1 Middle School in the past 2 years. After his sophomore year in high school, he went abroad directly. From then on, many people in the school only remembered the name Fu Ying and saw the various awards he had received, but never saw him again. Compared with a girl like Ellie Behi, Fu Ying is a high IQ academic master who is both good-looking and powerful. The two have been classmates for 2 years, but there is no intersection. As soon as Fu Ying entered the classroom, many people's breathing was disturbed. Miss Yangting couldn't help but look at them twice before lowering her head in embarrassment. Fu Ying is very tall, just 1 year taller, but he already looks over 1.8 meters tall. He is on the thin side. He wears a simple white shirt and jeans. His long legs are straight, and the slenderness can be seen vaguely when walking around the wide hem of the shirt. Waist. Lily glanced at it, blinked twice, but did not look away. Perhaps sensing her gaze, Fu Ying turned his head. The boy's eyes were slender and slightly raised, with a cold light in them. Before Lily could turn her head away, someone shouted from outside the classroom door. "Li Bei, come out for a moment." Lily avoided Fu Ying's gaze and looked outside the classroom. Zhou Zhan, who was wearing a basketball jersey and already soaked with sweat, stood outside the classroom door. One hand was still holding the basketball, and a few strands of hair were stuck to his forehead. When he saw Lily looking at him, 2 blushes appeared on the boy's cheeks, and he looked away uncomfortably, as if to cover up the basketball in his hand. He slapped it to the ground again, bouncing up and down. Zhou Zhan is a completely different type of boy from Fu Ying. At this moment, the plot has not progressed to the point where Li Bei and Zhou Zhan have developed into a couple, so naturally there is no stalemate in their relationship like later. He still looks like a sunny young man, without the sullen expression he had after the quarrel with Li Bei over shopping, and he still has the arrogance unique to his age. To be continued.